What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here for another week of fantasy football, stardom and situm, this time for week number 5 of the 2019 NFL season. New this week and for the rest of the season, I've given you guys the information for how well I'm doing, my accuracy on my picks for my starts and my sits. You'll see at the bottom corner an accuracy meter of how I did the previous week on each position, so I hope you guys enjoyed that addition. If you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below any questions you have for me regarding your roster, any start decisions, any sit decisions that you need me to give you some advice on. That's what I'm here for. So let's get right into my starts and my sits, starting off with the quarterback position. Kyler Murray, the first overall pick this past season, plays the Cincinnati Bengals in what should be a high-scoring affair in a game that the Cardinals could actually win. The Bengals are allowing a 116 passer rating this season, so I expect Kyler Murray to have a big week in week number 5. Jacoby Brissett versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Jacoby is tied, actually, believe it or not, for the league lead in touchdowns passing with 10. The Chiefs have surrendered an average of 276.5 passing yards per game, and T.Y. Hilton, he was back at practice today. Tom Brady versus the Washington Redskins. Tom Brady should be a bounce-back week for TB12. The Skins have allowed the second most touchdowns per game with 2.5 touchdowns per game. I'd expect Brady to at least have 2 touchdowns in this game, if not 3 or 4. Matt Ryan plays the Houston Texans this week. The Texans are 21st versus the pass, and when you take a look at the matchups across the board, there really isn't one that doesn't favor Atlanta in this game. Julio, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, they all have great matchups versus this Texans secondary. Plus, Matt Ryan, yes, he's traveling on the road, but it will be in a dome versus Houston. Carson Wentz versus the Jets. The Jets are 28th versus the pass this season, and Wentz finally has his full complement of weapons back. Deshaun Jackson should be back in the lineup. Alshon Jeffrey is back. Of course, Zach Ertz and the full complement of offensive linemen and the running game. The Eagles should definitely win this game in a game where the Eagles are favored by 14 points. Quarterback sits this week start off with Baker Mayfield versus San Francisco. This is on Monday Night Football. The Niners defense, they've allowed the 7th fewest passing yards in the league and the 8th fewest points. San Francisco also, the strength of that defense is up front with their defensive line. A very underrated pass rush, which should cause some issues for Mayfield and that struggling offensive line. Marcus Mariota versus the Buffalo Bills. He did have a good week last week, and he did impress me overall, but just don't chase it, especially versus a Bills defense that's one of the tops in the league versus the pass. 64 passer rating is what they're allowing to quarterbacks, which is super impressive. They just dominated Tom Brady and the Patriots. Don't expect Marcus to do anything this week, so stay away from him on the waiver wire. Daniel Jones versus Minnesota. The Vikings defense ranks 9th versus the pass this season. Jones had a juicy matchup last week versus Washington and couldn't make anything happen, so don't expect it to happen versus the Vikings. Minshew versus Carolina. The Panthers are first, believe it or not, versus the pass this season. They don't give up a lot of big plays, so I don't expect Minshew to really do anything. I know that he's a kind of a sexy pickup right now. Everybody loves him, but don't get too sexy with Minshew this week versus Carolina. Aaron Rodgers versus the Dallas Cowboys. You can start Rodgers. I'm not saying don't, but he doesn't have Devontae Adams this week, his go-to guy, and he's playing one of the best defenses in the league. Dallas's defense, it's 10th versus the pass and 3rd in points this season. My running back starts. Let's start off with Joe Mixon versus the Cardinals. Mixon, he could have this best game of the season this week. 28th versus the run are the Cardinals, so I expect Joe Mixon in a game where Cincinnati should be in it to the end, if not win the game. They should definitely be able to run the ball, establish the run, and then if they are winning at the end of the game, you'll see more carries go to Joe Mixon. Sony Michel versus the Washington Redskins. Redskins are 29th in the league versus the run. The Patriots know that they haven't been good running the football this season. They understand and they want to get that going, so I expect a big Sony Michel game. I also expect him to score a touchdown in this game, in a game where the Patriots are favored by 15.5 points. Austin Ekeler and Melvin Gordon, both of them, start them. They play the Broncos, 30th versus the run so far this season. Plus, the Chargers are limited at wide receiver. Their head coach, Anthony Lynn, was a running back himself, very talented in scheming up running backs to getting big games in the passing and running game. I expect both these players to have an impact this week. Gordon as a running back 2, maybe even 1, and Ekeler as a flex. Hines versus Kansas City. Kansas City is really bad versus the run. They're one of the top 5 worst teams versus the run in the league. Hines, though, is more of a pass catcher. He is going to be able to pick up a lot of catches when this game gets high scoring, when the Colts are trying to come back and win this game in Arrowhead. I expect Marlon Mack to probably be out of the lineup in this game. If he is, that's even more value to Hines, who should be on the field a little bit more and should probably catch 7 to 8 passes in this game. Jordan Howard versus the Jets. Howard had a great game last game, put up a lot of touchdowns. I expect him to score, get in the end zone again versus the Jets. Like I said, they're favored by 2 touchdowns, and you want a running back when they're favored by that many points. Running back sits. Ronald Jones versus the New Orleans Saints. The Saints defensive line is monstrous. They held Zeke and the Cowboys to only 45 yards total on the ground last week. I don't expect Ronald Jones to really be the savior of Tampa Bay this week versus the Saints. Wayne Gallman versus Minnesota. The Vikings are 11th versus the run this year so far. I don't really expect the G-men to score many points, so I don't expect Gallman to get in the end zone versus the Vikings. Jacobs versus Chicago, just forget about it. The best team in the league running the football, the Vikings, could not run versus Chicago last week, and that was without Hakeem Hicks. Whether Hicks plays or not, it doesn't really matter. They're just an incredible defensive line and very difficult to run against. I don't like Jacobs in this game. Coleman versus the Cleveland Browns. He might be back in the lineup this week. Whether he is or not, I'm not starting him because I don't know his role within the offense. And even if he does start, the Browns are pretty good versus the run. Wide receiver starts. Fitzgerald versus the Bengals. 3 touchdowns to slot receivers so far this year. Fitzgerald should be able to find his way into the end zone. And in a game that's going to be very close, and I expect Kyler to have a good game, I would also put Fitzgerald in my lineup as a flex. Deshaun Jackson versus the Jets. The Jets' biggest weakness is their corner play. Their corners are very slow. Deshaun Jackson is very fast. And the one game that he did play so far this season, he was explosive with Carson Wentz. The Eagles have been missing that part of their game. And with Deshaun Jackson back, they're going to target him down the field. Dorsett and Gordon versus Washington. I think, the whole Patriot passing attack should get back on track this week. Edelman should be in your lineup. Both of these guys should be in your lineup. They're playing a lot of 3 receiver sets right now in New England, and I expect them to pass the ball off play action a lot in this game. Washington's weak versus the run. That should open up the play action down the field. Dorsett and Gordon should both see good games in this one. I wouldn't be shocked if either or both get in the end zone. Valdez-Scantling versus the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a tough matchup versus wide receivers and quarterbacks in general, but Valdez-Scantling has his opportunity here. And as a flex, you could certainly do worse. He's going to be Rodgers' number 1 target. Anytime you're Rodgers' number 1 target, it's worth starting him. Thielen versus the Giants. With the whole Diggs drama going on, and we don't even know if Diggs is going to play, Thielen becomes that much better in fantasy with that much more of a target share going up for him. Thielen, though, he had this whole situation with Cousins apologizing to him. I think Thielen's going to get back on track in this game. They play one of the worst secondaries in the entire league. They're allowing the 25th most passing yards are the Giants. I expect Cousins and Thielen to have a big game in this one. And then my wide receiver sits, DJ Chark versus Carolina. The number 1 pass defense in the league. Dante Jackson should be back in the lineup for the Panthers at cornerback. Bradbury has also been playing very well, and the Panthers just generally don't give up a lot of big plays. Tyrell Williams versus Chicago. Williams has only actually put up 111 yards in 3 games. The reason why he's been startable in fantasy is because he's scoring touchdowns. With Chicago only giving up 4 passing touchdowns all year, I don't really expect that to go well for him this week. Scary Terry versus New England. He should see, if he does play, a lot of Stephon Gilmore, and the Patriots secondary is the best in the league. There's no debate about it. No way around it. The Redskins don't even know who their quarterback is. So I'm not starting a wide receiver who I don't even know who their quarterback is. Maybe going forward, Scary Terry will be nice in your lineup, but just not this week. Then you have Juju versus Baltimore. Baltimore has a man named Marlon Humphrey. Humphrey is one of the best, most elite shutdown corners in the league. He held to Odell to basically 20 yards last week, shadowed him. I expect him to shadow Juju this week, and Juju has not been great with Rudolph anyways, so I don't love it. My tight end starts, Jimmy Graham versus Dallas. Without Adams, Graham instantly becomes the number one red zone target for Rodgers, so definitely worth a start this week. Ben Watson versus the Washington Redskins. I think you could do worse than Watson this week. Again, the Patriots are favored by over 2 touchdowns. Watson has not played with the Patriots since 2009. They showed good chemistry in preseason and training camp between Brady and Watson. And I could see Watson having a touchdown in this game or a couple of catches in this game. And if you're desperate at the tight end position, I think you could definitely do worse than Ben Watson. Greg Olsen versus the Jacksonville Jags. The Jags are stronger at corner, especially if Jalen Ramsey plays. They're weak in the middle of the field. They give up the 9th most yards to the tight end position this year. And Olsen has actually seen 7 targets in 3 of his 4 games this season. Jack Doyle versus Kansas City. If Hilton does not play, he might become the number 1 option in this Colts offense. So look out for the injury report. If you need a tight end start, a streamer, Doyle could be your guy. All right. Those are my starts, my sits for the quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end position for Week 5 of the 2019 NFL season. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, Gronk spike the like button and subscribe. Don't be afraid to ask your fantasy questions in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Peace out.